the next generation of lifestyle awareness that will transform your life significantly. Hi, welcome to Living Wow Out Loud. I'm your host, CallyRae, founder of the Living Wow Center and author of the book, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me from Surviving to Thriving with Autoimmune Diseases. Living Wow is a lifestyle of choice and intention that was born from the truths that, number one, your body is designed to heal if you give it the environment to do so. Number two, you don't need a label or permission to be the expert in your own body. And number three, more than 80% of all diseases can be prevented or reversed by lifestyle. Unfortunately, this isn't what we're taught in our standard American diet and lifestyle culture. This podcast is a voice of hope and community where you will learn how to live a life of thriving that honors and embraces those 3 truths. Though you are an individual, you are not alone, and you can thrive living wow too. Welcome to Living Wow Out Loud. I am your host, CallyRae, and joining me today is a special guest. Her name is Adrienne Scharli. Adrienne reached out to me as a fellow autoimmune thriver, and we found that we had a lot in common with our autoimmune journeys, even though our diagnoses are different. Adrienne was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2015 with many lesions on her brain. Fortunately, she found information that could heal this disease without drugs. She healed all of her symptoms of brain fog, severe fatigue, numbness, and even the blind spot in her left eye within 5 months of her diagnosis. Because of this, she knew she had to share her information and help others. Since then, she has started an MS Facebook group called MS Support for Nutrition and Lifestyle. She wrote a cookbook that came out in 2022 called Nourish Your Way to Health. And she wrote another book called The Path to Reverse Multiple Sclerosis Naturally. Adrienne received her integrative health coaching certificate after a year of online studies and practices. And she wants everyone to know that our bodies have incredible healing abilities when you know what modalities to put into place. So thank you, Adrienne, for spending some time with us today and sharing your wisdom about thriving with multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. And the whole point is to help people out there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Adrienne, will you share with us your autoimmune story?
Yeah, so it happened back in 1996 when I was 28 years old. And I had just moved from California to Colorado, and I had one friend that helped me move here. I had a retail job. I was working as a retail manager at the time. I was here about 4 to 5 months, and I really didn't have a lot of friends. I had a stressful job, and I was quite lonely, actually. But one morning I woke up and I was numb from the waist down, and my hands were numb. And that was very scary for me. So what I did was I called my mother. She was a former nurse. And she said, honey, I want you to go see a neurologist. And that's exactly what I did. So I went to see this doctor. And this doctor did some tests with me in the office, physical tests, right? He had me walk a straight line. He had me touch my fingers to my nose and had me do some eye tests. And he said, if I can bet on it, I think you have MS. And that really scared me, struck a chord with me. And I didn't know anything about MS back then. All I knew was people that were diagnosed with MS ended up in a wheelchair. And I think our society has been molded to think that way. So not a lot of people know that you can heal most diseases out there, right?
Absolutely.
What I did is I came back from the doctor, called my mom and said, hey, this is what this doctor said. He thinks I have MS. And she said, okay, don't get a diagnosis yet. She goes, I want you to live life best you can and we'll figure this out. And so what she didn't want me to do was get that diagnosis, because if you remember back then in 1996, and I'm showing my age now, insurance companies, they wouldn't allow you to switch In companies, if you were diagnosed with something as large as a disease like this, and your rate sometimes went through the roof. So that's why my mom said, don't get a diagnosis yet. That's what I did. I just said, okay, I'm just going to try to be as happy as I can. One symptom I also had, which I forgot to tell you, was when I walked around, I had pins and needles in my feet. If you've ever had like your foot fall asleep and then you walk on it, it's very uncomfortable, right? It's painful.
Yeah.
It feels like pins and
Yeah.
needles. So that's what it was like for a month on my feet. And I had a job where I was on my feet like all day long. So magically, the numbness disappeared within 30 days. Now I know what caused me to heal. It was my mindset, right? So I told myself,
Ah,
I'm going to be as happy as I can. This is going to go away. I did a lot of praying that it would go away, and it did. It dissipated. 17 years later, in between that time, I got married, had a family, started a new career. I was in real estate. I was really happy. So, 3 days after I turned 45 years old, again, I woke up and there was something strange that happened to me. So, I had a blind spot in the side of my left eye. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I had something in my eye at first and I flushed it with water and all that. No, I still had it 3 days later. So if I wiggled my fingers on the side of my face, I couldn't see them. So my vision was gone. And
wow.
so I told my husband about it. And he goes, go to the eye doctor and see what he says. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. So I did that. And this eye doctor said it could be three things. It could be A, B, or C. I don't remember what A and B was, but I remember what he said for C. He said it could be MS. And I thought, oh God, here we go again. This is really strange. So then he handed me off to a different eye physician just to, I think, to verify that I did have that blind spot. And then that doctor told me to go to my regular physician and then to a neurologist, right? So once I was with this new neurologist, this doctor said, I want to get some blood work done and I want to get an MRI done because I want to throw things out that you definitely don't have, right? So after that testing, I came back, got my results, and I remember my blood work was extremely low in vitamin D. That's really the only thing I remember. I didn't know what that meant back then, but I know what it means now. Now, my MRI showed lesions all over my brain, too many to count. And
Wow.
Callie, I want to tell you that was shocking. I had all these emotions going on in the doctor's office. Like I started to cry. Like I didn't know what to feel. It was shocking. It was scary. I was saddened. I was hurt. I was just, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was an awful day. It was an awful day. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this can relate, right? Whenever you're diagnosed with something pretty big like MS, that is not a good day, right? So, anyway, I came home, told my husband about it, and he had the same thoughts as me. He thought, oh God. And we talked about this. He goes, I'm going to take care of you. If you end up in a wheelchair, I'm going to take care of you. But that's something that I didn't want. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is not what my life's plan was. Anyway, I went back to that neurologist, and that neurologist wanted to put me on a 3 to 4 day drip with steroids.
Yeah.
You're shaking your head, so you understand, right?
Yeah.
So, and 3 days later, I developed this migraine headache and it was awful, Kelly. It was so awful. I don't get headaches normally. It was like somebody took a sledgehammer and just hit it on the back of my head. And that's how I felt for a long time. So when this headache started forming, all these other MS symptoms started coming out too. So I started getting numbness in my hands and in my legs. The blind spot in my eye was still there. The reason that neurologist put me on steroids is because she was hoping that the inflammation would shrink and I
Yeah.
would get my eyesight back, right? That didn't work. It was, oh, I had brain fog. I couldn't think. I had severe fatigue. I wanted to sleep all day long. So, Callie, for 30 days, I was in bed. I had a washcloth over my head, and I thought I had a sinus infection. So I kept going to all these other doctors trying to get other prescriptions to get rid of this migraine headache and what I thought was a sinus infection. It wasn't. So I got all these other side effects from these antibiotics. So one antibiotic that I was taking, I got a rash all over my midsection. It was an awful time. Anyway, during this time, while I was in bed, I had my laptop with me. And when you're diagnosed with something, you want to learn all about it. And I thought there's got to be another way because I found out that the insurance that I had at the time did not cover any MS drugs. So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because our society's ingrained about taking drugs when you have a major disease, right?
Yep.
And that only made me worse as I had fear because I thought if I can't take MS drugs, I'm just going to get worse and I'm going to go downhill and I'm going to be in a wheelchair in 3 years, right? That was my thinking back then. With my research online, I came across a TED Talk. If anybody listening in your audience has MS, Dr. Terry Walls is pretty popular in the MS world. So if nobody knows her story, I'm going to tell it real quick because I saw her 20-minute TED Talk and that changed everything for me. So her story was she was very active, young. She became a doctor. I think she was a regular physician and she was diagnosed with MS and she went downhill really quickly and she ended up being in a wheelchair. So she had 4-stage MS. She went downhill fast. She got a tip from another doctor in her office. And this other doctor said, you need to talk to so and so. And this person who she talked to had a son that told her about his diet and the nutrition that he was taking that healed his MS. And so she thought, oh my God, I'm going to do the same thing. So what she did was at first she was taking supplements. So she learned what her brain needs, what our bodies need, right? All the vitamins, minerals, everything our bodies need to thrive. And then she thought, instead of taking supplements, I want to learn what foods have these vitamins and minerals and things that my body needs. And so she started doing that. And little by little, she started getting better. So after about 3 months, she was getting out of bed and walking around a little bit with some help with a cane. But then after 3 more months, she rode a bike. She got on her bike and rode her bike with her family. And then after that, she started walking pretty well. I think she started using a cane, but then today she's thriving, right? This happened in 2005. So this was a while ago. And that TED Talk that she did, it's gotten over 4 million views. So, Callie, after I saw that TED Talk, oh my God, like that changed everything for me. That was like my aha moment. And
Awesome.
yeah, so you could probably relate, right?
Yeah, I love our stories because they are so parallel. And one of the things that I think is really, and I don't want to interrupt your story, but you alluded to the fact MS has been around a long time.
Yeah.
As far as autoimmune disease, the title of autoimmune disease is a pretty, within the last 20 years. And MS, I remember when I first started practicing as a speech language pathologist, that was one of the brain injury rehab and the degenerative diseases of the brain was something that I worked with. And so in school, I was learning about MS and the demyelinization of the brain. And you can actually take a picture of it and see with MS versus a lot of the autoimmune diseases. It's a lab, it's a number. And like you mentioned, it's an elimination process, right? They are eliminating what you don't have. In my case, they were eliminating cancer as a reason for my lesion that wouldn't heal. They were looking at the numbers in my blood for the T cells and things like that. So it seems so nebulous and fleeting because it depends on that snapshot that they got versus your brain. And if you have demyelinization, you can see that on an MRI. And so, how amazing to have that proof, if you will, that this was your level of MS prior to you understanding when you had that. Yes, I can absolutely relate, and I think our audience can too, to that fear that happens when you get that label.
Right.
And I think for both of us, it was similar, and mine was a little different in that I had already started my nutritional healing. And so when I actually got that diagnosis, I'd had the rheumatoid arthritis and I'd had the relief from pain. So I already was healing. And so then when the doctor said, this is the path I want you to go down, I had the confidence to say, no, thank you, because it was awful. Versus yours, you actually tried the steroids because it was like, you're just so scared and not sure what to do. And so we do what everybody tells us to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You know, you think doctor knows best. I was brought up to think that doctors know best. And I learned later that we should be our own doctor. We should really research everything that we need. And doctors don't know best. Doctors are trained to go to medical school and to prescribe drugs. That's what they do. That is what they're taught. They don't know any other way. Very few.
And what's the first thing you do?
Yeah.
When you go to the doctor, what's the first thing you do? You tell them what your symptoms are. They don't know.
Right.
You are telling them what you're experiencing. You are the expert in your body. You may not know all of the options to manage it. And that's why you and I both have that passion and feel that calling to say, hey, there's a better way. And guess what? This way, it doesn't have side effects. We don't feel like we've had a sledgehammer to the back of our head for 30 days.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't want to interrupt, but I did feel like there's something that is unique about MS, and that is that there's probably more studies and more research and more diagnostics on multiple sclerosis than any other autoimmune disease that I can think of, because it used to be in the degenerative disease category. That's terrifying because, again, you had all that documentation, all that research, all that telling you you're going to end up in a wheelchair.
And what's sad is a lot of people didn't know back then. They didn't know. Right. And that's why we're putting this video out, right? This podcast out, this information out.
Exactly.
And after I saw that video, Callie, I thought, why aren't we taught this information? Why don't we know this? Why don't we know that we can heal our bodies with nutrition and other modalities? Why isn't this taught to us in school? Why aren't doctors teaching us how to do this? That was something that was going through my mind. And I remember that day after I saw that video, I rushed to the grocery store, and it's almost funny now because what I did is I bought all these vegetables and fruit, and I thought I was eating pretty good. I wasn't overweight. You know, I always made sure there was a vegetable on my plate during dinner with the family, right? But I wasn't getting enough. I wasn't getting enough or eating enough whole foods. So when I came back from the grocery store, I just started eating spinach and all these fruits and vegetables, like in my kitchen, just like gnawing on spinach. It's funny now that I think about it, but it was a long road, meaning I didn't know what kind of recipes to make with all these whole foods, right? Because our society eats the SAD diet, right? So standard American diet, SAD. So most of us eat way too much breads and pastas and pizzas. We just eat too many carbs and too much sugar, right? And I had a sweet tooth, like a lot of people. And I ate when I was at work, and when I went to the copy room, there was always like cookies and cake and all these snacks and chips and stuff with chemicals in it. And I started learning that stuff is not good for you. I remember when I stopped eating sugar. That was hard, by the way. The first couple of weeks were really hard because I told myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm giving up sugar. I'm not going to eat it anymore. I wish I would have done it another way. Now, I wish I just would have eaten more fruit. That would have, you put honey in your tea, that kind of thing. But I just went cold turkey.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you that after about a month, 4 weeks to 6 weeks, I didn't crave sugar anymore. And when I
Yeah.
ate a regular cookie or something that had sugar in it, it tasted like poison. I hated it. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I'm so glad that I held out and told myself I was not going to eat sugar anymore, because now it's funny because your senses in your tongue change, right? So now
Yeah.
when I put
Yeah.
anything that has sugar in it, it tastes awful. It's too sweet. And
Yeah.
if anybody goes down that road and you decide to quit sugar, do it. You're gonna love yourself afterwards, because there's two.
It is poison.
Yeah, and
It is
that
poison.
cause,
Yep, for sure.
yeah, weight gain is flour and sugar.
Yep.
And Americans, for the most part, we eat what's normal is 17 teaspoons of sugar every day. That's a
It just
lot of sugar. That's a ton of sugar.
There's actually a term for that, and it's metabolic programming. You crave what you eat. So if you eat a lot of sugary foods, that's when that sweet tooth really gets heightened. If you eat a lot of processed foods, your body craves that. And so as you're sitting in your kitchen chewing on your spinach, which is a whole lot better than a drip having a sledgehammer to the back of your head,
Right?
you might feel silly and you're like, oh my goodness, but we pop the pills because the doctor told us to. So
Yeah.
why not try the spinach because an alternative doctor told you to? Because it works. That metabolic programming is real, and it does take a few days. It's amazing to me how quickly our bodies adjust. Usually the first, again, to our audience, and I have an episode a couple back that is about elimination diet and the structure of it. But just a quick reminder and encouragement that if you're trying to make those lifestyle changes, that first few days are the hardest. That's
Yeah.
when you're going to have the withdrawals, the headaches, the fatigue. You're going to feel worse before you feel better, because think about cleaning your
I
house, right?
agree.
It gets messy before it
You're
gets clean.
detoxing, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But once you can get to about day 5 is where I find that it's like, you're starting to feel a lot better and you have the energy and you're feeling clearer. And then if you can make it to the 2 week, you'll probably not want to go back. And at 30 days, like you said, Adrienne, it's your tastes have changed. Your body has the cells are being
Yeah.
fed instead of they're being nourished
Yep.
instead of sabotaged. And
Exactly.
so they're craving that. And they're like, when you do take that stuff in, it's
Yeah. Who knew? Like, I had no idea that nutrition,
I
for the
think the
most part,
information is out there and it's much more available. And I think you would agree with me.
yeah,
My journey with lupus started in 2011 with RA. It was back in 96, about the same time as yours, but it wasn't called an autoimmune disease and it ran in my family. So I didn't really make any kind of connection that there was anything I could do about it, right? It was all accidental. But what we know now is so much different than what we knew in 96 when you had your very first symptoms. And then in 2005, when you saw a doctor, or no, 15 was when you
right.
saw Dr. Wald, but hers was from 2005. So she was really standing up as against the system to be, because at that
Be an
point it was just
advocate.
like,
Yeah.
it was just, you were crazy. You're a whack job.
Yeah.
That
No, that
can't
was
be true.
huge back
And it
then.
was
That was huge when she stood up and shared that information.
And now we're starting, even since I wrote my book, I've noticed there's so much more validation of lifestyle. And the 80% of diseases can be reversed or eliminated by lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
80%. And we have proof of the lifestyle choices versus back, we used to think as long as you weren't smoking and excessively drinking, that you had a healthy lifestyle. And I think we've come a long way from that.
And eating all that good food was hard at first. It was hard at first. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to start making recipes. I'm going to start making some really good tasting whole foods that are delicious, that I can just help me get into eating this way forever, where I don't have to feel like I'm miserable eating spinach by itself, right?
So were you doing that? Were you all in early on, or
All
was
in
it
after the video.
after the video? That was
I
all
was
it took.
all in.
You just
Yep.
Okay.
And I just
So then
knew.
what happened? How long did it take you for you to reverse? Because I happen to know the end of the story.
Okay, yeah. So most of my symptoms healed after it was about a month to 6 weeks, but I still had the blind spot in my eye. The blind spot took about 4 to 5 months, which is still amazing. Like
Yeah.
how I did not know that I had the ability to heal the blind spot in my eye. Like, how amazing is that? Really? Like, our
Yeah.
bodies are incredible healing machines if we just give them the right modalities and the right food, right?
Yep. Yep. That's what I say. Your body is designed to heal if you give it the environment to do so. That's my little shtick that I just feel so passionate about. It's you don't have to have a label. You can tell Adrienne's label is different than my label. And we had our labels, hers came and went, and mine morphed from again, same thing. They treated it as infections. We didn't know what it was. I had it for 10 years before I actually had a label. And I think that was a mercy of God, because had I gotten my diagnosis when I had my initial symptoms, I would have done exactly what the doctors told me to. And I would have been sick with that trifecta of cocktail of medications, the side effects of it.
Yeah.
And personally, this is pretty controversial, and maybe I shouldn't say it on here, but I really feel like the kidney damage that is so common and that people are dying from with lupus in particular, I don't believe that it's necessarily from lupus. I really think that it's the medications that we have, because the medications are so toxic and we know that they impact the kidneys and the elimination system. So why in the world would something that's so toxic be our go-to medication? Same with steroids. Steroids is what we give for everything for inflammation, and it's because it gives you a quick immune suppressant. But we don't want to suppress our immune system, folks. We need our immune system. That's what is healing our
Yep.
bodies. And so we want to work with it, not suppress it,
Right.
and certainly not poison it. That's the thing that Adrienne has learned as well, is that food could do what the medicine didn't. There was no side effects to the food, right? Other than feeling goofy in your kitchen because you're gnawing on spinach like a rabbit. Then
And I
you got
was,
over that really
Callie.
quick. Yeah, you got over that and you're like, okay, I got to make this something that I can feed my family and that I can keep as a lifestyle, right? Because you recognize that it's worth it. And
Yeah.
I hear that sometimes. I hear, oh, what you do is so amazing. I could never do that. It's so hard. And I want to scream, because I'm like, it's not hard. It's so
Yeah, it
easy. It's
really
so
is.
simple.
Yeah.
And giving up a cookie and choosing an apple instead all day long.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
much better than having to schedule an IV treatment or deal with the side effects of medication. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm biased because I've gone through it and I can't go back.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
go
I
back.
can never go back either. Unhealthy food will never taste as good as healthy feels. I say
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also figured out I have a substitute for everything. I make these amazing chocolate chip cookies with almond flour that don't have sugar. They're actually maple syrup, almond flour, and made with coconut oil. Like, so I
Yep.
think my getting my disease was a blessing in disguise,
Yep.
because I did not know. I had to learn all these different areas of food that I didn't know. Like fat. Remember the low fat craze that we had?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not know what a good fat versus a trans fat versus a bad fat was, right?
Right.
So I
Mhm.
had to learn all that. Now, if I wasn't diagnosed with this, I would still have no idea. I came up with a cookbook because I thought I'm going to make these amazing tasting recipes to help me enjoy food again, right? So I can live joyfully with my family. And one morning I was with my husband and I said, I'm going to make a cookbook. I'm going to create a cookbook. And he said, what? I said, I know, I can't believe I just said that. And I did. It took me 2.5 years. It was a labor of love, but you can buy it on Amazon. It's called Nourish Your Way to Health. It's all based on paleo recipes. For those that can see this video,
Beautiful.
that's what it looks like, but it's Nourish Your Way to Health. and you can buy it on Amazon. I've got everything in here from smoothies. So I was on green smoothies for a long time. I had them about every day for a while, and now I have them like 3 times a week. But I've got these amazing salads in here. I've got gluten-free muffins. I've got breakfast in here. I've got main dishes, soups. I've got all sorts of things. I've got side dishes. I've got cookies. I've got pudding. I've got coconut ice cream. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on any of the good stuff because I had to learn how to make these desserts and make them taste good. I can eat joyfully again. I'm
Yeah,
sure
and
you've
you
done
can
that
share
too,
that
right,
with
Kelly?
yeah, you've shared that with people, and I think now it's much more common. People are understanding, at least I feel like they are,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, I'll talk to somebody who's not, who's exactly sad, exactly where I've always been for most of my adult life. And that's when I get that fire and I'm like, nope, there's still more people that need to hear our message and need to know because, yeah, I agree. And that's why I coined the phrase living wow, because I just feel like it's the antithesis of it's an alternative narrative to sad because sad is so prevalent in our culture. It is our culture. And we're coming up on the holidays and everybody has their traditions. And it's, oh no, I can't do my traditions. Yes, you can. You just tweak it and it's okay. You won't miss it. We just had a gathering the other day and it was a potluck and it was funny because there were four couples and the host couple he loves to cook and we have a couple who is doing a mold detox, so they're doing Whole30 religiously by their direction of their naturopath, and then another couple who have been down the journey that we've been down, and so they just make their decisions based on clean and healthy food. And of course, my husband and I follow Living Wow, which is more the lifestyle, but definitely has that whole food, plant-based diet underpinnings. And so this guy's, what do you guys eat? Sand? And we said, okay, let's do it this way. Everybody bring a dish that you eat. And that way, if it's something that, if you can't eat in your diet restrictions that you're on today, if you can't eat what somebody else has brought, you at least have something to eat. And so everybody brought, and we did break it up by main dish and salad and side and dessert. And it was the most delicious food. And it was, everybody was just like awing and one was a spaghetti squash
I
side.
love
One was
spaghetti
a really
squash.
delicious, yeah, a really delicious salad with just a simple avocado dressing that didn't have any, because they're really being cautious of seed oils right
Uh-huh.
now. And so as we were talking and everybody was just loving, and gentleman who said, "Would you guys eat sand?" At the end, I said, "So, is it sand?" and we had a conversion, I think, where he just really realized, and his wife's been going through they're trying to figure out what autoimmune disease she has right now. And so I
Oh,
think it was helpful for him to see, hey, I can eat a little bit differently and it doesn't have to be slathered with sugar. And he does a lot of smoking and briskets and things like
mhm.
that. And that was in his mind what entertaining food looked like. And we had a wonderful time with delicious food. We were all stuffed. And it's just, you got to open your mind to try it. So that's my big thing, is just give it a try. And it's not necessarily, you don't have to do it by yourself in your kitchen. You can do it with your family. You can do it with your friends. You can do it with your church or
Yep,
your
yep,
community or whoever you meet with. And they're going to benefit from that information
yeah,
too, just like you're benefiting from Adrienne's story today, is just validating my experience and makes me feel like I'm not so crazy after
yep.
all.
You can teach your kids what good
Yep.
food is and what it looks like and how to make it taste good, right?
Yep. It's that ripple effect. That's what we're going for.
Yes,
That's living well.
yes.
That's living well, baby. So, what does thriving look like for you, Adrienne?
What does thriving look like? Just living my best life. Waking up in the morning to when I go to bed at night. What am I doing? What are my relationships or contacts am I going to have? Like today with you.
Yeah.
This is fun for
Yeah.
me. What foods are you going to make? Do you love your job? You got to love life as much as you can. The more joy you can bring into your life, the healthier you're going to be.
Yeah. That's that. I'm going to put that under one of our words of wisdoms for our listener. I think that one was a big nugget right there. I hope you heard that, because, yeah, the more joy you can bring into your life, the more healthy you're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it goes both ways. I think it's a little easier to, I don't know, I feel like joy is that deeper fulfillment. And when we're in chronic pain or you have brain fog or exhaustion, there's so much frustration that goes with that that it's hard to feel the joy. If those things as they're lifted and they go together, you have to find that I think it's hope. You have to find the hope. And if you can just hope long enough to give it a
Yep.
try, and then that try turns into a, oh my gosh, I feel a little bit better today, and then that leads to tomorrow, and you start to break this negative cycle and turn it into a positive cycle, and before you know it, all of a sudden you've healed the eye. Wow, I just love that. I just think that it's so tangible, right? This is very physical. Some of them, like thyroid, it's much more nebulous. Lupus, it moves around, and so my symptoms look different sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's your body and what thriving feels like to you. But if you don't mind sharing, Adrienne, we were trying to schedule this podcast and she emails me and says, I'm in Italy right now. How fun is that? And I just would love it if you could share what that looked like. You just got back from Italy, and I'm guessing that it looks a little different now than it would have before. Or is that something that you experienced before? Can you contrast the surviving and the thriving?
Sure. I felt like I was pretty lucky in that I healed my symptoms pretty quickly. I, I was lucky in that I found a way that I found that TED Talk and I just dove in head first, right? And I just started eating correctly. But that year, I also went to Europe. That was hard because when you go to Europe, all the danishes and all the breads, and it's really hard to be gluten free when you're in Europe. I remember I was still numb in my legs when I went to Germany, but I still enjoyed it, right? But now it's been, gosh, 9 years later, and I just got back from Italy. Now, I'm going to tell you, like, Italy was amazing. But as far as eating gluten free in Italy, like that's almost impossible.
Yeah, pasta, bread, that's
So,
like,
yeah, I'm going to tell everybody this too. Now, I don't eat hardly any gluten when I'm here in the States, right? Now, Europe and the
mm,
States, the flour there is different. There's a European committee that oversees food that gets sold in Europe. We don't have that in the States.
yeah, theirs is not genetically modified like ours.
Right. I'm not saying pasta every day when you're in Europe, but I'm going to
That's
tell
what I heard
you,
her say.
I bought a piece pizza. And you know what? I didn't feel guilty and I did not have any symptoms at all. Okay. When I got back, when I was there or when I got back. So it was amazing. Of course, when I got back, I started back on my diet, right? The diet I should be doing, which is paleo based. And I cut out gluten, dairy, and sugar when I'm here. The only gluten that I eat, and I make my own sourdough bread once in a while. And that's got probiotics in it. And I use the good flour. But when I was diagnosed, and for years, I just started putting in a little tiny bit of gluten in the last couple of years. Once you're healthy, you might be able to add a few things back in, but don't go overboard, right? You still got to stick to the basics. But I also want to tell you, Kelly, I had an idea after I wrote that cookbook. I thought, I want to write a book and I want to interview at least 10 other people who also healed their MS symptoms because I want to show everybody that it can be done. And I did that in my book. So there's everyone's story is different. And I've got 12 different chapters, not only on their stories, but on different modalities that we can use to heal ourselves, right? Food, avoiding toxins, having healthy relationships, grounding. So I didn't know what grounding was until someone
Mhm.
gave me a book on earthing. And every night I sleep on grounding sheets. As I'm talking to you, I have my feet on a grounding pad, my bare
Wow.
feet. So that's another thing I learned. Breathing exercises. Deep breathing is really good for you because normally we don't do that. Getting enough sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Limiting alcohol. So this is all in my book. So if anybody has MS or they want to pass on the information,
What is the title of your book?
so it's called The Path to Reverse Multiple Sclerosis Naturally. It's on Amazon and anybody can get it. So that's another something I did.
Great
I just
resource.
wanted to get it out just to prove to people that you can heal. Everybody can heal from most diseases out there if you catch it early enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know, I'd had mine for 10 years. It just, I think, don't feel like, again, don't wait for a label and don't feel like it's too
Yep.
late. At any point, your body is designed to heal. You're either going to grow sick cells or healthy cells. What are you going to feed it? And what I learned along the way was the nutrition was the foundation, but then there's more. There's also the mindset. There's also the energetic, right? And I'm guessing, Adrienne, that you had all those things in a great place, and that's why nutrition was it. And then now you've learned some
Yes,
more that
yes.
have it's enhanced that, but it just was already building on the foundation that you
Yeah.
had.
You have to
You
eat.
must have had,
Yeah, like
yeah,
chapter number 1 is you got to believe you can heal. That's number 1, your
yeah,
mindset. You're absolutely right.
yeah, yeah.
If you don't believe you can heal, you won't.
Which is another great wisdom nugget that she just gave you. You have to believe you're going to heal or you won't. And that was actually, it's not related to autoimmune, but I witnessed that so many times as the speech language pathologist and dealing with whether it's a degenerative disease, whether it was cancer, whether it was a car accident with a severe brain injury. I had so many patients that I could literally have two that were experiencing the same thing side by side, and their attitude and their beliefs would completely dictate their recovery process.
Yep.
It was absolutely people who had no reason to heal and recover would have a complete recovery with no residual side effects that were visible to someone besides themselves. Amazing. And I would have someone who really comparatively had minor injuries and willed themselves to death, literally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing to me. That was a huge testimony of mindset that I knew early on. And I would tell my patients, I'm like, you've got to trust me and that what I'm going to teach you is beneficial. And you have to listen to your body and you have to know that you can do
Yeah.
this
You have to
because
know it's going to, you
that
have to have
knowing
a
is critical.
positive attitude, right?
Yep. 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 And we've seen the studies of the snowflakes and how they grow in a positive environment versus a negative. There's a lot out there. And I think we discount it and think it's woo and craziness, but your body is designed to heal if you give it the environment to do so. And your mindset is part of that environment. The people you surround yourself with, are they lifting you up or are they tearing you down?
Totally.
Those kinds of things.
Totally.
That kind of takes us into another question I wanted to ask you and we just maybe touched on this. Do you have anything to add as far as like triggers, choices in your lifestyle that either support that healthy lifestyle or sabotage it? And you mentioned gluten is one of the things that MS does not like gluten.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, just once you heal yourself, you can have a cookie once in a while. It's not going to be the end of the world. Here is my rule. If I eat 90 to 95% good food, my body can take care of the rest.
yep.
Right?
Yep.
So,
Yep. I just had that conversation with a friend the other day. They were saying 80-20. And I said, for me personally, because of my autoimmune, I really strive for a 90-10
yeah. Yeah.
because I find it's a slippery slope for me.
Mhm.
And like I said, I've been there, I've been back, and I don't ever want to go back.
Yeah.
Adrienne, I know you say that you have reversed your disease and you're pretty protective and don't want to even say that you have MS, right?
Even in my book, I wrote, you are the cure. You keep hearing all these doctors, or you go to the MS site, we're still looking for the cure. There's never going to be a cure. You're the cure. You are the cure.
Yep, you are.
How you treat your MS and what you do to heal yourself, that is what's going to cure you.
And I would say not even just MS, but again, to me, MS is just physical. If you can cure MS, you can cure anything. It's literally demyelinization of the brain.
Yeah,
And so if you can prove with an MRI that now you've remyelinated, how can you argue with
you
that?
can't.
You can't
I've
argue
got
with that. You
stories in my
absolutely
book
are the cure.
showing that. I had one really
Absolutely.
bad case in my book where the doctors are like, you better plan for your funeral. You better plan for that wheelchair. You better plan to be in that bed and never get out of it. And she came back a couple years later and she got an MRI and the doctors were floored. They said, "How this is a healthy brain. You healed your brain. Anything is
Yeah.
possible." Isn't that
Yeah.
great?
Yeah. Yes, I love it. That is just so encouraging, and I want everybody to pick up a copy of her book to get those stories of inspiration. And I just thank you so much, Adrienne, for sharing that with us. Can you tell us how can people get a hold of you, and what are you working on now?
Sure, sure. Anyone can get a hold of me. So I've got a website, nourishyourway.com. I'm a health coach. So I help people with MS or other autoimmune diseases reverse their symptoms. It's a 12-week program. So I'm doing that, but I also have a summit coming up. So anyone listening might want to be a part of the summit. I'm going to have a website. It's not out yet, probably in November, beginning of November, end of October, the autoimmunesummit.com.
Okay.
What I'm doing is I'm interviewing, like how you're talking to me now, Kelly. There's going to be 15 professionals that I'm talking to, having an organic conversation with. And this is everybody from health coaches to functional medical practitioners to acupuncturists to laser specialists to yoga experts to sound healers to Reiki healers. I'm going to be talking to a lot of different people, and all of these people have information on how they helped somebody with an autoimmune disease. So there's so many different healing modalities out there that I want to get this out. So it will come out January 10th. So put that in your calendar, January 10th. There's going to be one interview that comes out once a day. So once you go onto the website, the Autoimmune Summit, put in your email, and then January 10th, one interview is going to come out once a day. So you're going to get over 2 weeks of information from all of these different professionals in the health field. I'm super
Love
excited.
that. Love that. I love summits. I do a variety of summits throughout the year, and I just think they are a wealth of information. And I love to, sometimes I'm still working in addition to my Living Wow mission. And so I can't always attend a live class. And I do attend live classes, but I sometimes have to pick which ones I can and can't. And so I love the summits because usually, like you said, it'll be live and then it's recorded and you can catch it in that window while it's there. And then a lot of times they'll have recordings available afterwards. Are you going to have that available, or will it just be during that window? Will they be able
Yeah,
to?
so this is how it's going to work. So it's going to come out one a day, right, starting January 10th. But if you missed a day, you can sign up for the VIP program. It's $27. And that's just to pay me back for my time and my editing and all that, and just the marketing and how to get all that out. So you'll get all of the 15 speakers all at once. So you can listen to them at your own pace, right? That should be available for a month or two if you want to pay that $27. It's cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a great resource. And I hope people will tune in and listen, because that can be a great opportunity. Is there anything else you want to share with us, Adrienne?
I guess I hope you take this information and just know that you can heal. Don't listen to a doctor who says, you know what, if you don't take these drugs, you're not going to heal. So listen to your own intuition, do your own research, and be your own doctor. That's my advice. So anyone can heal. I don't care if it's cancer. I don't care if it's any disease. You really have the ability to heal yourself if you want to.
Yep. That's what I have found as well. And I walk a fine line because I don't want people to think I'm doctor bashing, because I'm not.
No.
But I just feel like, especially with chronic diseases, Western medicine and especially in the United States, the way our medicine has changed, our healthcare system has changed in the last 30 years. It's not ideal for chronic care. And so if you want to heal, if you want to just treat it, that's awesome. But I find you spend a lot of time going to doctors, having tests, getting no answers, and feeling really crummy. So why not sit in your kitchen and chew on some spinach? It's going to be an awesome solution. I just have this vision now of Adrienne just sitting in there, just gnawing away, just determined that she is going to beat this MS. And that is all I need as my inspiration to give it a try, right? Just give it a try.
Right.
And that's, I call it living wow, because it's that big all-encompassing lifestyle. But Adrienne, you've done a nice job of sharing your story with us and that inspiration. I'm inspired, and I hope our listeners are as well. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Callie. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, if you find value here on the Living Wow Out Loud podcast, will you please share it with your friends and take a minute to rate it on the platform that you're listening on? That's how we live wow out loud. You know that more people need hope and they need the messages shared. And that's how we get recognized among all the noise. This is where you find your voice. Will you please share and subscribe and rate so that we can grow?